Yo, welcome to Wiz Loves Cars, and this is the 2022 Chevy Bolt EUV. Before we get started, I just want to welcome all my new subscribers, and if you're new to my channel, go ahead and mash that subscribe button. Also, like and share my videos if you like the content. Also, be sure to check out my Twitter, where I post exclusive content and do giveaways. Today, I'll be reviewing the Bolt EUV. And as we all know, the Bolt EUV initially graced the scene in 2017 and then was later redesigned in 2022. Both versions are electric hatchbacks. However, Chevy decided to make a larger, more pragmatic version, hence we now have the Bolt EUV. In this video, I'll take you through all of the interesting exterior and interior features, and then we'll take it for a spin. So stick around to the end to find out if this Bolt EUV is something that you should have on your radar. So let's get into it. This EUV has been touted as a crossover SUV of sorts, although it only comes with front-wheel drive and doesn't have a crazy amount of ground clearance that you would find in most crossovers on the market. Price-wise, this EUV comes in at around $34K and has a fully electric drivetrain, which offers 250 miles of range and puts out around 200 horsepower. I've also included all the charging details down below if you want to take a look at that for yourself. Next up, we also have the light bar, which I'm going to dub them the catfish lights. Now, you can only see this light bar when the headlights are on. So if the DRLs are on, you'll be able to see this light bar. But one cool thing to note about this is that this light bar is not used for the brake lights or the actual turn signals. That actually happens down below in the bumper region, where you have these two lights that you see here on either side of the bumper. So what's going to happen is, if you're braking, the brake lights will turn on here. If you have your blinkers on, you'll also see those down here. And then if you have your hazard lights on, they're also going to show up down here, which I think is pretty interesting and pretty weird. Also, you have the black plastic piece here, which y'all know I don't like plastic pieces on cars, but this one actually resembles a bumper bully. Y'all know the bumper bully. I'll put it in the B-roll. Don't worry about that. The bumper bully. So this looks like a bumper bully. And then opening this trunk is also manual. So there's no automatic way to open the trunk. Once inside, you have a good bit of storage back here. So you have this space. You also have some storage space underneath that you can use. And it's removable if you also want to place more items in there and have more overall storage space in the rear. Next up, we have the front of this Bolt EUV, and while we were on the topic of lights, let's continue to talk about those for a second. So the lights in this Bolt EUV are top and bottom. So you have these lights here, which are only the DRLs, so the daytime running lights, and then when you turn your turn signals on, they also sort of sweep across, and that's pretty common in most luxury vehicles, so it looks pretty good on this EUV. Additionally, this is not consistent with what happens with the light bar in the back. Remember, I told you earlier that the turn signals and the hazard lights and all of those different things are happening down below, below the rear tailgate, in the rear bumper area, or that back fascia. But here, that is not consistent with what's going on in the front. Actually, if you want to turn on the headlights, you're going to see those down here in the front fascia region, where normally you would see fog lights or things of that nature on some of those crossover SUVs or some of those larger SUVs. Additionally, this is an electric vehicle, so there's no need for any vents or anything like that. So what they did was they kind of have this Art Deco style grille of sorts that's here. It looks pretty good. I think it really complements this vehicle, and all the bold lines that you kind of see here in the hood as well, that really kind of help give it a bold, kind of a fierce look for an EV that you don't normally see. So I really like that. I think that was a pretty good design. Next up, let's just go ahead and take it on to the interior. Oh, one more thing. I forgot to mention this. So this EUV doesn't have a frunk that you would find in most electric vehicles, right? So Tesla, all the other ones, Rivian, they pretty much have frunks. This doesn't have a frunk. Instead, what you'll find underneath is pretty much the battery, the fluids, all of these different things in there. It's not very pretty, but I'll give you a window into what that looks like. But instead, that's why you have that additional space in the trunk or the cargo area that you can use, in essence, like a frunk, but just in the rear. So you'll have that storage. All right, so we're here on the interior. The interior is actually quite refreshing, quite modern, quite new. Really like it. Now, I usually start with the dash, but I'm not going to start there today. Today, I'm going to start with the gearbox. So the gearbox is actually pretty interesting. So you have a series of buttons and switches to essentially operate all of your driving controls. So for example, the park button and the neutral button are actual buttons that you press, and the reverse and drive buttons are actual, basically switches that you would have to pull to put the car in those settings. So whether it's reverse or whether it's drive. Right below that, you also have a button that has a shoe on it, which is a one pedal driving button that when depressed will basically put the car into the one pedal driving or the regenerative braking mode. That's pretty cool to have that here. Also, right up above, you have a flag which is used for sport mode. Now, sport mode in this is a little bit interesting because it's not super fast. I think I mentioned earlier that it only has 200 horsepower. So, you know, whatever sport mode means to you, I guess you can go a little bit faster with that. And then right next to that, you have this really big traction control button that's here as well. Right beyond that, you also have this charging pad, which I think is pretty cool. And then you also have some of the USB-C as well as USB charging options here, as well as a 12-volt outlet if you want to utilize that as well. Moving back, you have two cup holders that are here, pretty standard. And then you also have some pretty decent storage in the center console, I would say. Not much, not a crazy amount, but it's there. And moving back up to the center stack controls, you also have heated and cooled seats. So I think that's pretty awesome, especially if you live in those hot places or even in those cold places. You have both options. So I really think it's really good that they included that option in this Bolt EUV. Additionally, you also have the heated steering wheel controls that are here, and then your climate controls that are also here on the center stack. So moving up, you have this pretty big touchscreen. So I really think this is nice. It gives you a good field of view, especially when you're reversing and just etc. Right? It's pretty responsive to the touch as well. It's pretty much just like your cell phone if you wanted to kind of touch on the screen and move around through the different menu options. And then moving to the left, you also have a couple buttons here. So you have the home button, you also have the volume button that's located here above, or it's not a button, it's really more of a knob or a dial that you would turn to turn the volume up or down. And then right below that, you have a menu dial that you can use to navigate the menu as well, which complements the touchscreen. Now, I think that the menu button and the volume button being on the same side, I think that the volume button can be moved over to the right, so that way the passenger doesn't have to reach across. Well, some of y'all don't like people touching our radios anyway, so maybe that's a bad idea. But I think you don't really need it there. I think it'll be more practical on the right side. But anyway, there's also a volume control button that's on the rear of the steering wheel that the driver can use. So all in all, I just think that those two buttons are too close together, or the button and the dial are too close together. And speaking of buttons, there's also a push start button that this vehicle comes with, which I always think is weird. I know when I reviewed the Ioniq 5, it also had a push start button. I think it's weird because usually most EVs, you get in, the car pretty much senses you're in there, and then you're essentially off to the races, whether it detects a key or detects you or your phone or what have you, and you kind of just go. The next thing is the steering wheel. So you have a nice leather wrap steering wheel. It's pretty, it feels good, if I'm being completely honest. And one weird thing in this vehicle is that it has one paddle shifter, and that paddle shifter is used to increase the regenerative braking. So if you don't like the way that the one pedal mode is operating and it's not slowing down fast enough for you, you can increase the regen if you want to use that paddle shifter. Now, going back to the screen really quickly, one of the menus on the screen that I really like is the energy menu. And in this energy menu, you have a detail screen, which basically tells you what is sucking the life out of your battery, right? So is it your driving and accessories? Is it your climate settings? Is it, battery conditioning? So you're able to see that there. And then you're also able to drill down into the section where it says impacts. Impacts is going to basically give you a double click into what's basically pulling the life out of your battery. So is it your driving technique? Is it the terrain? Is it the climate? Speaking of terrain, if you were to take this on those big old hills in San Francisco, I'm guessing you're probably going to lose some efficiency and some battery power there. So this car tells you all of that. So I think that's pretty dope because EVs don't typically do that. So I think that's a really great feature to have as well. And lastly, before we head into the back, one thing that I'll touch on are the seats. So you have these nice blue leather seats. They're very comfortable. They have this little triangular design in there that looks pretty cool. And the perforation is that way you feel that nice cool blast of air when you turn on those cool seats. But I really like these. I think they were very well thought out and they really complement this vehicle. All right, let's head to the back. All right, so here in the back of the Bolt EUV, you have a lot of space. So this is about, I think, 6 inches or so longer than the actual Bolt EV. So that space you're going to notice in the space that you have between your knees and the front seat. So it's very comfortable back here. I'm able to kind of stretch out, so to speak. And one cool thing, or one weird thing I would actually say that I noticed back here, is that there's only one seat back storage pocket. So just here on the rear passenger side, I have that. There's none over here. Also, there's no climate control vents back here. So everything that this passenger back here is going to get is going to come from the front, essentially. So the only thing that you have back here is the USB-C charging port as well as the USB charging port. And then it's complemented by the chrome accents. You can see these chrome accents on the vents, on the driver's, the steering wheel, and all of that around the car. So I really like that. And you also have some good head clearance back here. So I would say it's good for me if you have someone back here that's maybe, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". They can still fit back here, but I would say that you probably don't want to go over any speed bumps too fast because they will definitely hit their head. Other than that, there's not really much to talk about back here. You still have the nice comfortable seats and the continuation of this triangular pattern here on the seats, but otherwise that's about it. But one thing I will say that I really appreciate about this is the fact that the windows go all the way down. So if you want to stick your arm out the window and chill, you can definitely do that. So good job, Chevy. All right, it's time to drive. So just really quickly before we even take off, you can notice I have it in reverse right now, as you can see, but the screen is, you have this big screen that shows you this full range of view for your reverse. So like I can see all these different parking spots behind me. So that's pretty dope. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hit that drive switch and then let's take off and see what this can do. This EUV, fake SUV. I'm just kidding. All right. So the cornering is, it's pretty interesting. I would say that it's not that. It doesn't have that stiff suspension, so it's not gonna corner as you would expect a sport car to corner or something that has more of a sport suspension. So you're gonna feel that a lot as you're turning. So you're gonna be shifting in the seat. You're gonna feel the weight shift as well, and it's gonna dip a little bit when you're turning. But other than that, the ride quality right now is pretty good. It rides just like a SUV. It's, I'm going over some bumps in the road, but it feels very comfortable. The cabin is also relatively quiet as well as I'm driving. So it has all of the comforts of a luxury SUV, or not a luxury SUV, but it has all the comforts of a SUV. Also, I have the cooled seats turned on right now as well, and you know, I feel some cool air blowing on my butt. Feels a little weird, but you know, takes some getting used to. But I like that. It's a nice touch. You got those heated and cooled seats that I mentioned before. And then I'm also going to turn on this one pedal driving really quickly to see how that performs. So I'm going to just drive a little bit, and I'm going to let off of the accelerator, and it slows you down pretty good. And you can see that little circle spinning right there that says regen, so it lets you know that the regenerative braking is engaged. And I'm gonna just go ahead and turn it around real quick. Yeah, see this, you know, the handling is, it's not like a sport car or a sport SUV or anything like that, but it's pretty practical. Acceleration is, you know, it's okay. It's not gonna wow you and knock your socks off. I think that if you want something that's going to be a little bit more punchy and a little faster, you'll probably have to go with the EV6 or an Ioniq 5 or a Model Y, something with that dual motor type of capability that's going to, you know, give you a little bit more horsepower and a little bit more speed and propel you a lot faster, especially while you're accelerating. I'm going to try to use this. Okay, I'm hitting that paddle shifter now to increase the regen. I didn't really notice a crazy amount of difference with the last slowdown to that one, but it's there. It does its job. You can also toggle on your automatic lights with that button there. Pretty interesting. Overall, I would say this vehicle is very practical. I think it's something that is going to be able to have a barrage of different use cases. So, you know, if you have a kid going to college, you know, I think this is a good starter car for them. If you are a person that's probably going back into the workplace with, you know, with everything kind of opening back up, you may need a commuter car. I think this is going to be perfect for someone that's commuting. I think this is going to be a great everyday commuter car. You get good range. It's spacious on the interior, and it's just a very practical vehicle. You can fit adults in here, you can fit kids and adults in here. I just think overall you can't beat it for the price, especially with this also being an EV. So Chevy did a really good job with this. So I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I think that if you just fixate your mindset on the fact that this is probably more of a practical vehicle and not a performance vehicle, and you set that expectation as your foundation, I think that this is something that may serve you well in the future. So to answer your question of, is this something that you should have on your radar? I think so, for all the reasons that I just mentioned. So I encourage you, go to the dealership, go check it out. You might like it, you may not like it, but either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially if you own one of these. Hop in the comments. Y'all know I love engaging with y'all, and I love talking about cars with y'all. So hit the comments and let's discuss.